My name is John. This is Kevin, and this is Sydney. And as Brett was saying, we are with the JCK Foundation. And what we're really excited about is obviously we work with the faculty. So the school social worker who was just here, she actually saw the faculty workshop as well. And we work with the students obviously tomorrow. We did the high school all day today. And mental health is obviously one of those things that is so heavily talked about, but it's not always easy to talk about. And, when we were younger, when we were in high school and middle school, that's when I really started to struggle. And just to be able to have these conversations and to be open and to do whatever we can to help you guys, that's our goal tonight. We hope that you guys can leave just feeling a little bit more informed and just feeling a little bit better about your own journey with yourself and then with your kids. So it's really an honor to be here, and we truly can't wait to get started. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce the team. So Sydney right here is our program coordinator, and she actually is in charge. She created the Student Legends Network, which is a follow-up for any student that's ever been a part of our program. Meets every other Thursday over Zoom, and it's an amazing way for kids to keep in touch with each other and keep in touch with us, through the open dialogue that we have in the curriculum that Sydney creates. But more importantly, Sydney is just an incredible human being. And I think when it comes to mental health, that's one of the most important resources, having people that actually care and want to listen. And that's why we're so excited to work with your kids too, because, I feel like I didn't have that when I was in middle school. So without further ado, here's Sydney.
Thank you. Well, it's so nice to be here. This is our second day in Chatham. Never been here before, but your community really welcomed us, right from the get-go. So tomorrow we'll be working with your students. And we're really excited, and hopefully by the end of a presentation, they are more equipped to come to you when they are going through something or struggling. Someone who struggled in middle school, I will say, thank you to parents. I wish, when I was their age, I was able to say, Mom, Dad, it's not your fault, it's just me going through it. So if they haven't said that yet and they're acting out, I promise, not that they don't want to, they just don't know how yet, they'll say it to you later. But our goal is that they leave tomorrow's presentation feeling open and honest and feel comfortable going to you, going to other mental health professionals at their school when they're going through something. So thank you for being here, and I'll let the two of them get on.
Thank you, Sydney. And right here next to me, this is Kevin. And Kevin isn't only my coworker, but he's also my best friend. And I've known Kevin since I was about 11 years old. And it's interesting. I told the students the same thing, and I'll tell your children tomorrow as well. It's interesting. When we were growing up, I just knew Kevin as a guy I would go to school with, a guy I play sports with, and someone that I always just enjoyed hanging out with. And the irony of all of it is we didn't realize that we were both really struggling. I struggled with OCD and depression. Kevin struggled with depression. And as we got a little bit older, we got so much closer. And being able just to have one friend to have these conversations with, I really wish that when I was in middle school, I could have expressed myself more. And it's obviously very hard. I know that kids can sometimes be very cruel, especially at that age. So just being able to try to teach your kids as much empathy as possible. And we try to show them just how important it is. We try to show them through our own stories and through our own experiences how important it is to be open about what they're going through. But Kevin is someone that, has been there through so many of my own dark times. And that's the beautiful part about friendship, though, being able to have someone to listen and work with now, too, which is amazing. So without further ado, here's Kevin.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you to John. And before anything else, big thank you to you guys for going above and beyond, and really taking an interest in your child's mental health. As John mentioned, sometimes us as kids, we're guilty of it. I'm sure your kids maybe are sometimes as well. They don't show as much appreciation maybe as they should, or they know how to. But I promise, just by virtue of being here, your kids are going to benefit so much, and that really means the world to us, because it's as much as we're looking forward to working direct with your kids, and that's where a lot of the work and a lot of progress is made. Our approach really that's born out of the things that we needed when we were kids. It's really holistic, and it's really important for us not just to give the kids techniques and coping skills to use in their own life. We want to make sure that they're supported in every facet of their life, and a lot of that is at home with you guys. So we're really hoping, as John said, that you guys leave here feeling a little bit more confident and comfortable having some conversations about mental health with the child, whether that's something that they need right now or are going to need some point in the future, and also talking a little bit about your own mental health, because there's no statute of limitations on working on yourself internally, mentally, and emotionally as well. So thank you guys so much for being here. It really feels great to be in Chatham. We're feeling very welcome and safe in your community, and we're really looking forward to getting started and getting to know you guys a little bit better as well.
Oh, there we go. All right. So with that being said, we have a little survey that you guys can take here. So you can scan that QR code if you have your phone, and it's not mandatory, but it just helps us kind of help you guys learn more about you. And there's a way to stay in contact with us afterwards too. So we'll give you a chance to scan the QR code, and all the answers are completely anonymous. But it's just a way for us to get to know you guys more and also to improve our program with your feedback. So there's going to be a prompt that asks you for a password. Once you get to that prompt, that means you're all set. We'll give you guys that password at the end of the presentation because the pre and post are on the same link. So yeah.
Hey guys, while we're filling out the survey, just out of curiosity, raise your hand if your child is in 6th grade currently. 6th grade parents now. All right, a couple. How about 7th grade? 7th grade, any 8th graders? All right, it's a great mix. Any of you guys have students in multiple grades? Or some siblings? All right, awesome. Well, we're really looking forward to getting to meet them. We actually did meet some of them actually when we came by the other day. They were super sweet. They really made us feel welcome, and we're really looking forward because as you guys will learn, and as John mentioned, middle school was really for myself and John and Sydney as well. That was a very difficult time, kind of the outset of our journey with our mental health. So again, really looking forward to having a great day with them tomorrow. Take a second to load.
Yeah, I think it's just.
Yeah. There we go. Okay.
All right. So a little bit about who we are. So through educational programming, research and advocacy, the JCK Foundation promotes mental wellness in schools, businesses, and communities by opening up conversations, sharing hopeful stories of mental health resilience, connecting people to mental health resources. And what that really means, and I'll tell your students, your children, the same thing that I told the high school students today. That really means we're going to do whatever we can to help you guys on your journey. Whether it's as simple as this hour that we get to spend together tonight, or as complex as you all keeping in touch with us for as long as you need. I just remember very vividly how alone I felt when I was going through it, and to be able to even just have one person to talk to. If you need us, we are so happy to help in any way. And this foundation has a very special meaning to all of us. But I'll tell you a little bit of my own story. So JCK actually stands for John Cleaver Kelly. And to describe John in a nutshell, he was the most electric, kind, compassionate, and just empathetic person I'd ever met in my life. And he always had this amazing way of making people feel confident being exactly who they were. And, he was lucky enough to be my best friend. I'm sorry, I was lucky enough to be his best friend, is what I meant to say. Yeah.
Well, both. I think both are true.
Yeah, good point. But, with that being said, I'll tell you guys a little bit of the story. So for me, my journey with mental illness started when I was actually summer going into 7th grade. So I'll never forget, 6th grade was very good. I played sports. I was in the school play. I was always very high energy and energetic, right? But, I grew up in a relatively religious family. And I remember there was one night, I was on family vacation. I just couldn't stop saying these nightly prayers. I kept thinking, I say this prayer the wrong way. My mom's going to be possessed by the devil, and it's all my fault. And I was like, wait, what? Because I knew deep down, right, that these thoughts weren't rational, but I still couldn't control them. And I found myself staying up until 2, 3 in the morning, just saying these prayers over and over and over again, because I just desperately didn't want something bad to happen to the people I love. And the hardest part about this wasn't just having to deal with the thoughts, but was having to hide it from my classmates, from the kids I played sports with. I grew up in a very small town, pretty similar to Chatham, and I felt like if anyone knew that I had these thoughts, I was going to have no friends. People were going to push me away. And my 7th grade year was a pretty big disaster, to be honest. And, my way of coping was trying to show everyone that I was okay by being this massive class clown. And I remember I ended up going to the principal's office literally 155 times in 180 days. And I remember so vividly, it wasn't because I wanted to be a troublemaker, but again, I had no idea how to control these thoughts. And I remember one day, very vividly, where my buddy was like, John, I'll give you $5 to throw a cookie at Mr. Isaacson. So I remember I grabbed the cookie, throw it at Mr. Isaacson, get immediately sent to the principal's office as I should have. And my little sister, who's 2 years younger than me, was in the same school as me. And I remember as I'm walking to the principal's office, I see her with her friends in the hallway, and she looks at me and just goes, John, like, not again. Because every time that she saw me get in trouble, it would crush her. Because she knew me as the person that I was, as the person that would help a complete stranger if they were struggling, as the person that would walk her to class every day in elementary school when she was crying because I cared so much. And all she's hearing from her friends are, oh, you know how crazy your brother is? You see how nuts John is? Like, John, he's nuts. Like, what's wrong with your brother? And it crushed her because my sister, when I tell you she's like the best human being you'll ever meet, I mean it. She's smart, she's beautiful, she's athletic, she's everything that you could wish for in a sister. And I remember, she would actually, I didn't find this out until I was a little bit older, but she would go home every day and cry to my mom because she was so sad and so afraid that she was losing her big brother, and she hated the way people spoke about me. And it just goes to show that mental health affects the whole family. Like, it wasn't just me who was going through it. It was my sister, my brother, my parents. And I remember every time I'd be in the principal's office, I always have the same three thoughts. The first thought that I would have was guilt. I was like, I can't believe I'm just letting my mom, my dad down again. They worked so hard to make me feel good about myself. So I'm just letting them down. Like, what is wrong with me? The second thought would be fear. Because like, oh, my dad, he's going to be angry. And the third thought was anger, because my older brother, Paul, who was supposed to be the guy who kind of guided me, just didn't seem to care. And that indifference hurt me so much because all I wanted was someone to kind of take me in and help me. And I was very angry with him, even though me and him have such a beautiful relationship now. It wasn't that way when I was in 7th grade. So to say it was a lonely time would be an understatement, but that's where John Kelly comes into play. So I'll never forget, we're at this family barbecue, and our parents were best friends, and all of our families were best friends. So we would meet like every 2 or 3 weeks. I'll never forget, John Kelly comes up to me at this barbecue. He looks at me with this big smile on his face, and he goes, dude, I hear you have OCD. And I was like, what? Like, who told you this? Like, how do you know this? He goes, dude, our parents talk. And I was like, well, why did my mom tell you this? Like, no one's supposed to know this. It's supposed to be this big secret. And he goes, dude, man, like, relax. I'm here to let you know that I have OCD too. I'm going to help you get through this. And I remember my jaw dropped to the floor. And I was like, wait, you have these thoughts about like the devil possessing your mom? He goes, dude, all the time. And he gives me this big high five and this big hug. And I remember he just goes, John, like, I know it doesn't make much sense, but I promise you that I'm always going to be here for you. And that conversation that I had with John 20 years ago, to be completely honest, that changed my life. And honestly, I think it saved my life. And I always tell the students the same thing that I'll tell you right here. Never underestimate the impact that one person can have. Because if John didn't come up to me at that family barbecue that day, there is no way I would be here right now. And I wouldn't be meeting your kids, and that would break my heart, because honestly, there's nothing I love more than being able to help the same way that John helped me. And that's why I think every single one should be so proud for being in here, because it's clear how much you care about your child, even if they don't show it back. So keep on pushing forward. It really means a lot to us. And my parents are another one of the main reasons why I'm still here too. So, with that being said, unfortunately, John did lose his battle to OCD and depression. He was 24 years old, and obviously it breaks my heart, and it's always going to break my heart. But I will say, I feel it more and more every day with your students, especially here when we're having these conversations. So I always tell the kids, every time that you're keeping, that you're being kind to someone, that you're being open, you're keeping my best friends legacy alive.
Yeah, so guys, it's very difficult to totally explain or summarize everything that this foundation is, because it's so many different things to so many different people. And when I think about what this foundation is for me, more than anything else, it's a community. It's about people. It's about taking people, uniting them underneath a common message, a common theme, and affecting real, tangible change in people's lives. It's something that I do every time I come to a new school and get ready to speak to a new group of kids or a new group of parents even. I think about, what did I need at that point in my life to further my own journey with my mental illness? More than any resource, more than any mental health professional even, what that version of Kevin needed the most was a community. To feel safe and welcome, to feel like, he belonged somewhere, not just for what he was going through, but for who he was. If that's something that you feel like is missing a little bit in your own lives right now, or maybe just something that you want more of, the same way, we offer this opportunity to your kids, the same way it's been there for me, it's been there for John, Sydney, and so many other students and parents, just like you guys. This foundation, it can always be that community for you if you ever need it to be. You're getting really good at this. Thank you.
Yeah. So just a little bit about what we talk to your children about. So, I think the most important piece of what we do is building community and showing empathy. It's not just about, I think something that we always try to explain to the students, it's not just for a child who's struggling with a mental illness, but it's for all of us, so we can have that empathy and be a good friend and a good ally to someone who's going through it. So we talk about some of the signs of mental illness, how to have a conversation. The power of listening is probably my favorite one. And we'll talk a little bit more about that tonight. We share a little bit of our own personal stories with them as well to help them feel comfortable with what they're going through, some of the determinants of mental health, and obviously some mental health resources. But I think obviously for me, vulnerability and being able to show the kids just how important their story is really means the most to me. But
yeah, these are all so important in their own right. And I really wish we could dive, really deeply into each one. But the word that stands out to me the most always on this whole list is right up here: stigma. Now, again, John and I, we don't come from necessarily a medical background. We're not clinicians, we're not psychiatrists, but what we do, is fight the stigma of mental health. I always tell the kids, we're not so much fighting mental illness as much as we're fighting the stigma associated with it. So that's very important for the kids to know. And like John said, one thing that we really preach is vulnerability. It's not enough for us to ask your kids, to be honest about mental health and share things that are going on in their lives without us doing the same. So the way that we accomplish, creating an atmosphere where people feel comfortable, dropping the stigma is, we are vulnerable ourselves. We talk a little bit about the things that we've been through, some things that have helped and maybe not helped on our own mental health journey. And, to take it a step further, the power of listening. It's not being an ally is not just coming to a school, giving a kid a bunch of information, and then, going on your merry way. We really make an effort to connect with the kids and empower them to speak up about what they're going through. Because again, if you can have the best information, the best presentation, the best stories, but if you don't take the time to empower and make a kid feel heard, all that is really for naught. So these are just kind of the things that we use, again, to connect with their kids and hopefully just make it a little bit easier if they ever need to talk about what's going on in their own lives.
And real quick, what I'll add to that, what's great about this is not just an assembly, but we actually do breakout groups throughout the day tomorrow, which is really exciting. We break them up into small groups, and obviously we're with some of the teachers, and we're walking through some of these questions with them. And it's an amazing way for the students to share their thoughts, to help each other out, and to also have these open resources that they're almost creating for themselves by virtue of just being honest about what they feel about this subject, which is really wonderful. So today, just a couple of little goals here. We talked a little bit about this before, but hopefully you'll be able to identify signs of mental illness in your child. Parents will feel more comfortable talking with their child about mental health in general and referring them to the appropriate resources. Parents will know where some of the local mental health resources are located. And also, one of the big things too today is just making you guys feel more comfortable with whatever's going on in your life, and being able to not only these goals of being able to have a conversation, being able to, hopefully we can help you guys with some techniques on it and what's helped us because we've had some very interesting conversations with our parents over, I guess, our 33 years of living, right? Some of them that we struggled with in middle school, and some things that really, really helped us. And we'll talk about some of the things that helped us and that hurt us, and hopefully it can help you guys on your journey with your child as well.
Hopefully, if all else fails, you guys know that at least, you have one place to go, with this foundation in this community, if you guys ever need any help in any way.
All right.
Yeah,
we'll get mom on.
Why don't you explain what they're about to see, John?
Oh, that's us. So, yeah. But my mom is going to share with you guys a little bit of her own personal experience about being a parent with a child who struggled. Oh, there she is.
Hey, Ellen, can you hear us?
Yes, I
right,
can.
Awesome.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
You guys, can we hear Ellen okay? All right, so we got a bunch of Chathamites here, really chomping at the bit to hear your story. So whenever you're ready, please feel free.
Okay, well, thank you for having me. I'm always happy to be a part of this. I wish this had existed for me 20 years ago. 20 years ago, roughly, is when John was diagnosed, as he mentioned to you, and it was a very hard time. I had a little bit of an idea of what was happening with him, only because I had a special education background, but in terms of how to navigate it, I was pretty lost. And the resources just weren't really readily available at that time. It was hard. Like him, I felt kind of alone, but at least I was an adult. At least I had some special education background. But for him, I felt so bad. You could see the struggle. You could see it in his eyes. You could see it in his expression. When I say in his eyes, it was more that the light had gone out in his eyes. He, as he mentioned, was a pretty active kid. He was always a happy person. He was always charming and, got into some trouble, but overall was a good kid. So when I started seeing him get into trouble, that was a real red flag, especially in middle school when, he went from being an A student basically to being a D student. And as he mentioned, he spent a lot of time in the principal's office. And it wasn't so much that he didn't do terrible things, but he did disruptive things. Basically the reason for that was that he was trying to really take the attention in his mind off what was happening to him inside and have people just laugh with him. And, he was basically trying to deflect what was going on in his mind so that no one would know. He carried that burden alone. And, it's hard for anybody to carry a burden alone. But when you're 12 years old and you're in middle school, there's so much going on socially, there's so much peer pressure. It was very hard. And so he spent a lot of time acting out, um, trying to become popular. He was the class clown, but he wasn't happy at home. Even in school, he would spend some in between time in classes walking back and forth because of the OCD and the intrusive thoughts. And he really tried to hide it. There was only like one teacher that really knew what was going on, and there was really only one professional that was there to help him. And fortunately, she was great. She was the school psychologist. And, John mentioned earlier about how one person can make a difference. And in our case, that school psychologist made a big difference because it was the only anchor he really had in a rough sea of middle school. That's the best way to describe it. She always had an open door for him. She really got to know him, and she really understood that although, yes, he was disruptive, yes, he needed to face the consequences of that. She understood the reasoning behind it, and she could see that he was struggling. So she really worked hard to try to get other faculty members to see who he was. But at that time, they weren't quite ready for it. And again, as Kevin mentioned earlier, there was quite a stigma with mental illness, and the school just wasn't, they just weren't ready. So John had the school counselor. I had Janet Kelly, John Kelly's mother, and that made a world of difference. To have one other person that I could talk to was so helpful. As you probably know, there is no blueprint. There is no direct path. There's no set of instructions on how to deal with a child with mental illness. Everybody's different. Everybody has their own story, and everybody has their own way of dealing with things. And basically, as parents, your job is to just sort of try to help your child figure out what works for them and what works for you. Because as John mentioned earlier, mental health and mental illness affects the whole family. As John mentioned, his sister, his brother, my husband and I weren't always on the same page. He thought he needed more discipline. I said, I think he needs something else. So, it's a process, and you're going to take 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But the important thing is to just have faith in yourself and put one foot in front of the other. So some of the strategies that worked for us, that my friend had mentioned, that cognitive behavior therapy was helpful. So we tried that for John. We just to backtrack, we had tried medication. We had gone to a psychiatrist, but the psychiatrist was focusing more on his ADHD, and that was not the overriding issue. And ironically, the medication that John was given actually exacerbated his anxiety because it wasn't addressing OCD, it was actually addressing ADHD. So that's just a word to the wise. Medication can work wonders in the right dosage. Unfortunately, John was still growing. He was small. He was going through puberty. And we just didn't have the right medication or the right dosage. We tried 3 different things, and eventually we had to get the pediatrician to help us wean him off. So the next step, as I just mentioned, was that we tried cognitive behavior therapy, and that actually, for John, was very helpful for two reasons. The first reason was that it just happened that the therapist also had OCD. And that was so important for John to see because it was the first time he knew of another adult that was suffering from the same thing as him. And for him to see another adult that he could trust, that seemed like he had it together, to see this other adult on the other side of his illness gave John a lot of hope. And it relaxed him and it made him receptive to what the therapist tried to do with him, the different strategies that he tried. So that was helpful, you know. So and the cognitive behavior therapy just happened to be a tool that worked for John. The exposures and um, just the different exercises that he had to do on his own. The exercises empowered him, and he did start to see an improvement. So cognitive behavior therapy worked for us. Medication did not, but it could be the opposite for you. Another thing that really worked for us that is a little unusual was something that the school psychologist suggested. Um, she could see that John really needed a true friend. He had friends in middle school, but unfortunately, they were all immature, just as he was. And they weren't ready to hear his story, nor was he ready to tell it. So he really had nobody to talk to. And he spent so much time, as I said before, trying to hide it and keeping his anxiety bottled up deep inside that it became overwhelming. And actually the burden becomes heavier when you can't share it. So he needed someone to share it with, and the school psychologist suggested a dog. And for us, a dog was a great answer. My husband didn't want the dog. He's not a fan. But for John, he was willing to get the dog. And it was a little miniature dachshund. So he didn't take up a lot of space and he didn't eat too much, but he meant the world to John. And for the first time since John's struggles began, aside from John Kelly, the dog was the only constant that he really had in his life that he felt really comfortable with. The dog gave him a non-judgmental person, so to speak, that he could relate to. The dog also gave him total unconditional love. And the best part of the dog for us as a family was that the dog kind of brought us all together. We enjoyed him as much as John did. But we also started realizing that John would basically unload some of his thoughts and feelings on the dog and kind of speak to the dog. He'd use a different voice and he'd get down on the floor on his level and kind of share his day or share what was going on inside his mind. And it was the first time we had a window into what was happening inside John's mind. And that was so helpful for us. So eventually, like, we would talk to John through the dog. And, it just was a very beneficial relationship. So that really helped John. Eventually, we needed to send John to a different high school. He needed, and sometimes you can do that and sometimes you can't. We were able to send him to a different high school where he kind of got a chance to start with a clean slate. Because as I said, he went from being an A student to a D student. And we actually sent him to a Catholic school, which is more regimented, but for him, the structure worked. And he kind of got his academic act together again, and that gave him more confidence. And again, as he matured, he felt more comfortable and was able to share what was happening with him. And once he was able to do that, once he could share that burden, the weight was lifted, and he realized that, number one, there were people out there that were willing to hear him. And number two, he really wasn't alone like he thought he was. And it was a game changer once he was able to start sharing what was happening. And then, when you share your own story, you start to realize that you're not the only one with a story. Everyone has a story. Some people have more chapters in their story, but we all have things to share, things that we keep inside. And I think the thing that I like best about the JCK Foundation, which John didn't have growing up, is that it provides a vehicle for kids to really try to get in touch with themselves and to start realizing as they're maturing and growing up that, they are not alone, but they not only are they not alone in the eyes of others, there are others that will reach out to them, but they can also be that person that can make a difference to someone else. So that's one of the things I love most about the JCK Foundation. The kids really respond to John and Kevin and Sydney, and they start to realize that, once they get over the initial uncomfortable part, they start to realize that, the person next to them might really need their help, or the person next to them might be the person who can help them. And by the end of the presentation, they learn to open up. They learn about compassion. They learn about kindness in particular, and they start to form a community. And I think one of the things that's so important is that JCK really tries to foster that feeling of community. And even if the kids aren't ready yet or the school isn't quite ready to institute something on a permanent basis, the foundation encourages the kids to stay in touch. I believe John mentioned earlier that they're not a one and done kind of thing. If a child reaches out to them, they will respond, whether it be virtual or an email or a phone call, but they will respond. And what's nice now is that their community is growing, and they are starting to institute after school virtual programs where the kids can anonymously get together and continue the conversation. So it's a good thing. It's so important to have that community, that caring, that conversation, the compassion, but most of all, the kindness. So I guess what I want to say to you is, as you embark on this journey with your child, just keep exploring all resources, and don't be afraid to reach out to another parent. You can't be alone in this either. Everybody needs somebody to help them along the way, and perhaps you can navigate this with someone else. Hopefully, the school has many more resources than we had 20 years ago. Hopefully, your community will as well, and just try anything that you think could be of help, because you just never know. And be patient with yourselves, give yourselves grace, and again, realize that it is a process, and there'll be some stumbles along the way, but in the end, hopefully you'll move forward, and hopefully you'll get to the other side as John did, and I really hope that you do. And I hope your children can relate to the JCK Foundation in the way that it's meant to be. And I wish you the very best of luck. And I thank you for letting me be here.
Thank you, Ellen. Yeah, Ellen, great job as always. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Go enjoy your time with your grandson.
yeah, go
Thank you.
enjoy Cam and tell him I say hello.
Okay, will do.
Love you. Bye.
So again, John and I, full disclosure, not parents. So, when we're on the front lines having these conversations about situations where kids are having difficulties relating and having conversations with their parents, that's all we can do is empathize. So, that's why we bring in the experts. So we bring in the big guns. And Ellen, again, she's been through a lot with John, and she's been such an exemplary, mother and resource and ally. And so, it does mean a lot to us that she's willing to share, and I hope you guys took something from that, because she's the best.
All right, and that being said, it's always interesting and always gets me emotional, so I always regroup. And now for the next slide. So, talking to your child about mental health. So here's just a couple of do's and don'ts. Feel free to take a picture. We could also send this slideshow out if anyone wants to kind of go back and look at this. But a couple of these things that are really important. I'll do the don'ts first. Don't panic, judge, or dismiss. But more importantly, don't beat yourself up if you've done any of these, because we have all done it ourselves. And I think that we're all learning, and it wouldn't be fair to ourselves to try to hold ourselves to this insane standard of perfection, because, you know, that's not a good example for us even to set to our kids as well. And we're all going to make mistakes. And I think that is so, so important. So again, just by you guys virtue of being here shows the type of parents that you are, which is incredible. And I remember whenever I would do something wrong, I would always spiral and do another thing wrong and be like, how could I do that? How could I do that? So please give yourself the same grace that you guys give to other people too. It goes a really long way. So a couple of do's, and I love these, and I'll go through all these, but I'll share with you guys my favorite one as well. So asking open-ended questions, you know, asking your child, you know, these open-ended questions, bringing up your concerns. It's not a bad thing to say, hey, you know, I noticed that you haven't been hanging out with this particular person. Is there, you know, any reason why? And, you know, they might be, it's all right, it doesn't matter, mom. It doesn't matter, dad. You might get that response, but I promise you that they appreciate that, and it just keeps the door open to know that you actually care about their day-to-day life. Listening, obviously, you know, the power of listening goes such a long way, and it's very tempting sometimes, and I get it, to try to have all the answers for our kids because we love them literally with all of our heart. So it's one of those things where it's kind of like, I want to tell them. Sometimes it's just taking a step back and listening and hearing about their day, hearing about these little things that you might not have expected to, and doing it. Sometimes kids don't open up during our timeline, right? Sometimes I know we always want a child to open up at 6 o'clock when we're home from work, but oftentimes it happens on a long car ride, on a weekend, when you least expect it, on a time where, you know, they can't look at you, but they can hear you. It's so interesting. We'll talk a little about that in a bit, but just that power of listening goes such a long way. And this one is my favorite one right here. Normalizing mental health issues and help-seeking behaviors. Now, oftentimes, I know me, I think the same with my parents. Our parents are our heroes. And when I was first struggling with my OCD, I felt very ashamed. I felt like my brother and my dad, the two men in my life, they struggle with a mental illness, which makes me this weak son. And it just led to so much shame in my own head. And I think one thing that is so important, again, you don't have to share your whole life story with your child, right? I'm not saying you have to do that, but when you do normalize these things, it goes such a long way. And I'll never forget, after everything happened with my best friend, John, you know, my father ended up being such a huge support for me, and it wasn't what I expected. Not that I didn't expect my dad to help me, but he never was really vulnerable about his mental health before. I always thought of him as, you know, I thought that there was nothing ever that could go on in his mind. And I'll never forget, he tells me, he talked to me about how he used a therapist before. And I was like, Dad, you went to a therapist? And he's like, in his own way, he's like, hey, you know what? I actually have gone to a therapist before. And when I heard that from my dad, that meant the absolute world to me, to know that my dad actually had gotten help before. And it made me feel so much better about me getting help, and just being able to share with the child. They open up to you, say, hey, you know, I've gone to therapy before, or, you know, Aunt Linda has gone to therapy before, or whoever it is, someone that they're close with, just kind of setting that example that it's okay to normalize these things. We don't, you know, kids can see right through us still too. It's like, we don't have to act like we've never gone through stuff ourselves. It actually makes a child a little bit more comfortable to open up when they hear their parent being a little bit vulnerable about certain things. I know that last one you love, Kev.
Yeah, John likes saving that last one for me. And all of these are so important in their own right. Each one of these points here could probably even be, you know, a presentation all into themselves. But the one that really means the most to me is this last one, particularly this right here, validate. So you guys have heard a little bit about John's story, particularly with his parents. I'm going to tell you guys a quick story about my relationship with my dad. So again, much like John, you know, my father is my hero. A lot of people say that, but really, my dad is just the greatest example I could ever think of a father. You know, everything he's ever done has been for me and my two sisters. So when I was diagnosed with my mental illness, major depressive disorder, when I was a young adult, you know, that was the perfect time for him to like spring into action. Right? You know, my dad, he's very type A. He sees the problem, he finds a solution, then it's not a problem anymore. So when, you know, I was diagnosed, he was like, okay, well, I'm just going to do what I've always done. We're going to fix it. It won't be a problem anymore. But, you know, even though my dad, he had the greatest intentions in mind and at heart, and I love him for that, you know, that's just not really how it worked, you know, with what I was going through emotionally. So one thing he used to say to me a lot, he said it, you know, in a way that was really encouraging. He goes, Teb, we're going to fix this. We're going to fix this, buddy. Me and you, don't worry. I got you. We're going to fix this. And when my problem really persisted and even started to get worse, you know, with my depression as I got older, fix this started to become fix you. You know, Kev, don't worry, man. Me and you, like, we're going to fix you. Like, you're going to be fine. We're going to fix you. And even though, again, he really just wanted what was best for me and he was trying to be there the best he could, you know, the way he was saying that in my mind, I was like, fix me. You know, don't fix something unless, there's something wrong with it. So all of these horrible ideations that I had already had about myself, about how ashamed and how guilty I should feel about having this problem, my dad, through this way of speaking, like he was really, invalidating me and really making all these things seem real. So again, through a lot of different resources, mostly stemming from, my involvement with this foundation, I was able to get better, and I'm in a much better place now than I was then. And it got to the point where a year ago, I worked up the courage to tell my dad that story. I sat him down. I was like, Dad, listen, before I say anything else, I just want you to know that I love you. And you've been there for me every single day of my life. And I recognize that and I appreciate that. But when he used to say, like, Kev, we're going to fix you, like, I just need you to know that really hurt. And to be completely honest with you, it wasn't your fault, but that really hindered my progress, for a long time. And my dad, I was bracing for the worst. I was ready for him to jump in and be defensive. Well, no, that's not what I meant. Like, I was just trying to be there for you. I was just trying to help you. Like, what do you mean I made it worse? But to his credit, he didn't do any of that. He didn't jump in. He didn't plead his case. He certainly didn't get defensive with me. All he said was, Kev, I had no idea I was doing that. If I was making you feel that way, I apologize. I think that wasn't my intention, but you know what? That's not important. What's important is how you felt in that moment. And I'm glad that you had the courage to tell me that story. And I'm not going to do that anymore. Like I promise you that. And I've been proud of my dad every single day of my life. Like he's never let me down once. I've never been more proud of my dad than I was that day in that moment, because he finally gave me that validation that I didn't even know that I needed, but in that moment, I realized it was everything to me. So again, validation, it's something that maybe we don't understand, when it's happening in the moment, but when it comes to your child, especially when your child is going through something, make sure that we're keeping that validation in mind, because it can really make a world of difference.
All right, so just a couple of risk factors here. And you guys probably know quite a few of these, but one that I really want to focus on is that perception of pressure from parents and peers. Oftentimes as kids, we think that our parents want us to be perfect. We think that our peers need us to be this perfect version for as a friend. But so often, we put so much pressure on ourselves, especially as a child, to kind of live up to our parents' expectations, so to speak. And I think oftentimes, so often parents would love nothing more than, like my mom was saying, to get inside their child's head and to be able to help them in any way that they can. And I think something about that perception too, that is so important, is kind of doing what we can to kind of drop that perception and creating those environments where we can have these conversations with the child and say, hey, I know that this isn't always necessarily an easy thing to talk about, but whatever you tell me, I love you either way. And I'm proud of you. And I know sometimes we often say, hey, my child, I want them to get the best grades. I want them to go to the best school. The truth is, from most parents that I talk to, the one thing that you really want is just your child to be happy and healthy. And I think that kind of reminding them of that and reminding them of their talents and the things that you love about them can really go such a long way in our lives as well. That's it. So this is actually one of my favorite things here. So we're going to do a quick case study. So we can answer this out loud too. You can use that Padlet as well, but we have a smaller group here too, so it's okay to speak out loud, whatever you guys feel is best. So this one is interesting. So Alex is a 14-year-old student who excels in everything that they do, be it academics, athletics, or as a musician. Despite their success, when they are home, they are isolated in their bedroom. Their parents have heard them crying on multiple occasions, but felt that entering the bedroom was an intrusion. However, when they tried to approach their concerns when Alex came out of the room, they were met with an "I'm fine. You don't know what you're talking about," as they kept on going. So, as parents, what can we do?
Guys, again, if the Padlet is more comfortable, this is going to link you to an anonymous forum. If you'd like to submit something anonymously, it's totally fine. But like John said, we're more than comfortable having a conversation with you guys out loud if you would like. And I do know that you guys do have a whole bunch of activities coming up after this. So we'll try to wrap at 5:40. But again, if anyone has any thoughts on this situation, maybe it's a situation that you've encountered in your own life. Again, John and I done a lot of talking today, and again, like we said, we're committed to listening. So if anyone has any ideas, any thoughts on how we could help Alex, we'd love to hear about it.
We'll give it a second too.
Say, I don't know what's going on, but I just want to be I love you.
Love that.
What's better than that? Again, just letting a child know that you're there for them. I think that is, again, and the keep on walking response, I think we've all been met with that before. Like, it's nothing, whatever. Like I'm no stranger to giving that response as well. But I think when you really relay love and compassion and empathy to anyone, but let alone your own child, it gets in there subconsciously. And whether or not that's been reciprocated to you or recommunicated back, I think it really does make a difference. So even if you're not getting the response that you want, keep chipping away. I think that's a great answer. Thank you for breaking the ice there. Appreciate that.
Amazing.
Mm.
Another one that I always notice here too, that I'll bring up to you is you notice that it says they excel at everything that they're doing. And my mom brought this up to me, and when she did this for the first time, and she was like, John, it says they excel at everything that they do, but it doesn't sound that like they're enjoying everything that they do. And I always tell students, I have so many conversations with kids that, they might be a really good athlete or a really good musician or a really good student. And yes, there's pieces of that they enjoy, and that's a good thing. But sometimes what we excel in and what we enjoy can be completely different things, right? Letting that child know that, hey, I'm so proud of you for doing all this work and that you're doing great on the football team or whatever it is, but kind of curating that, hey, what have you been doing, for yourself too? Like for me, I'm a horrible artist, right? My mom is actually a phenomenal artist. And it's funny, my mom was never an athlete, but she was always an incredible artist. And I do love to do art, but I will be honest with you guys, I'm a pretty bad artist. And I know art is obviously in the eye of the beholder, so to speak, but I was never really a good artist, but I love to draw. And it's actually a coping mechanism that I use often now, and I've been trying to use more and more, is actually drawing. So kind of making sure that our children are doing things that they enjoy and kind of asking them about what they enjoy, and not always kind of being so quick to say, I know my son loves baseball because he's been playing baseball for 5 years, but maybe as much as he loves baseball, maybe there's other parts of him that he wants to explore more. And maybe he wants to, join the school play, or maybe he wants to play a different sport, or just things that he enjoys that we might not realize. So just keeping that in mind as well, I think goes a really long way.
Anyone else maybe want to expound on that first answer to that, or maybe just something totally different, maybe a strategy, maybe something we can kind of convey to Alex, to make them feel like, they're supported, or, they can go to us if they need to. Well, I'm actually, was that hand? Yes.
And bring it up again at a different time. Like maybe when they're upset, the time they're to talk, but I think they're good.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I think keeping our eyes peeled for those moments. Yeah, please.
Just say it's
Meet them on their level, right? And what you did just there is something that we really appreciate, or we really try to communicate with kids: empathy. Putting yourself in your son or daughter's shoes. Well, this is how they're most comfortable communicating, even though it may not be, my method. It's not about me. I'm going to make it about them. I'm going to meet them where they're comfortable. That's an amazing suggestion. And that could be with technology, it could be anywhere, just the setting, like you mentioned, the time of day. It actually reminds me a lot of something that actually I learned from Ellen Tessitore, the expert. It's called keeping the door open, kind of like the door open method. And again, I think a lot of times, especially as parents, you guys are super busy. We want progress to happen in our time. Like we want to come home from work. It's like I got a half hour before we eat dinner, and then I go do my other thing to have a conversation with my son or daughter. Like now's the time. Like we're jumping in right now, and that just isn't always conducive to making progress. Like it really takes two to kind of have that conversation. Sometimes like our time isn't necessarily the time. So again, it kind of goes in hand in hand with what you mentioned, man, at the beginning. Just letting your child know, hey, I noticed that something's going on with you. Right now might not be the time to get into it. If it is, great, like I'm here for you, but it's probably not. So I want to let you know my door's open, metaphorically. And whenever you're ready to come through that door, just know that I'm going to be waiting for you on the other side. We can have a conversation, do whatever you need to do. It's just letting them know that even though it's not right now, even though it's not like every day at 6 p.m. when you're at the dinner table, which is what like kind of was my situation with my parents, just leave that door open, let them know it's always available to you. That's a huge thing for a child to know.
And the last thing I'll add to that really quick, because I know we're coming short on time, though, it's interesting. Whenever I was struggling, I always knew my parents were going to ask me how I was doing. So I always knew to have a canned response to make them go away, so to speak, right? So I think that's why what we were saying before too is, kind of meeting a child on their own time, and just, it could be in the car, it could be after a baseball game, it could be when they're starting to feel a little bit better, but always kind of having those little things. Like I used to love walking my dog and walking with my mom. That's when I would share the most, because I would just see my old dog and I would just I'd just be more comfortable sharing. So that's just something also to keep in mind as we wrap up.
For me, it was the car. For whatever reason, that was, how I felt most comfortable. I think it was something about just staring straight ahead. I didn't have like a pair of eyes or multiple eyes. Most of the time with my mom and my dad, kind of like, just burning a hole in my chest. I felt like it was more relaxed. And again, it's all about kind of like, the way to create an atmosphere to get someone to open up, make them feel comfortable. So learn about your kids, understand what makes them comfortable, makes them uncomfortable, try to create that atmosphere as much as you guys possibly can. All right, so again, with that being said, I know that there is a whole bunch of other stuff going on tonight. We really encourage you guys to go ahead and take advantage. What we'll do now is we'll just jump ahead, and we want to make sure that we leave you guys with our contact information. So really quick before you go, this is all of our stuff here, and big thank you to Sydney, who's our tech person tonight. So these are all the different ways to get in touch with us. So this QR code, I think, will actually bring you to a post survey that you can take if you'd like. We'd really love to hear from you guys. Again, gives us another opportunity, or gives you guys another opportunity to keep in touch with us. And then here is all the different ways you can reach out. So our email addresses, our social media, our website. Again, just like we tell the kids, it really is not a one-shot deal with us. Like, we are at your guys' disposal to be a resource for whatever you guys may need. Maybe it's tonight, maybe it's next month, maybe it's next year, whenever it happens to be. Really, there's nothing too big, too small, too weird, that will stop you from getting in touch with us. So please, just whatever it is that we can do, just know that the JCK Foundation, we're always here for you guys in whatever way we can be.
And thank you guys so much for taking the time. It really means the world to us, and I know it means the world to your children, whether they express that or not. So keep on being you, and thanks for doing this. And we're excited to meet your kids.
Yeah, we can't wait. Hopefully it's as meaningful for them as it is for us. It's been a great experience in Chatham, and we're really looking forward to finishing strong. So thank you guys for being here, and enjoy the rest of your night. It's been great. Thank you so much.
All parents, I will send it out to all, I'll send out, don't worry about taking pictures, I'll send it to all parents, 6 feet. So for those of you, parents start to figure out, how many parents you got there? Okay, so if you guys want to get going upstairs, get the longest path, if you go to the 3rd floor, there's a panel with a table up top upstairs with all of your children's schedules in it. Start out first year, do your first year class, and then we'll rotate through.